Alright, look, at one point in time, General Motors made some of the weirdest sleepers ever, including things like the Buick Regal. But its brother was the Pontiac GTP. Sure, there were a million Pontiac Grand Prix out there, but this one was special for one reason. It had a supercharger on it. This car has always gotten away from me, and of course, when I finally find one, not only does it have a supercharger, it also has a turbocharger. So yes, this 530 wheel horsepower Pontiac GTP is twin charged. With its 6-cylinder engine and a ton of force induction, building boost at idle, this thing is a torque steering monster. So what's it like driving a twin charged Pontiac GTP? Let's go for a drive and find out. Hi everyone, David here. Welcome to a 1997 Pontiac GTP. The GTP is one of those cars that I've never had the opportunity to drive one, but I have had the chance to drive kind of its brothers or siblings, kind of like the Buick Regal. Now, ZZP was kind enough to let me drive a turbocharged Buick Regal, which was a 12-second car. It was pretty quick, and it was really clean and pristine. But I always wanted to drive the Pontiac version, and thankfully today I get to. But for some reason, anytime I drive a car for the very first time, it can't be stock. And this is twin charged. You have a supercharger on top, then you have a turbocharger at the same time. You couldn't pick one, so you do both. So the Buick Regal I drove, it would ramp into power very smoothly and everything. This has the benefits of the blower and the turbo. And essentially, the first time it was dynoed, it made somewhere around 485 wheel horsepower. Now, it makes more because it just has more boost. So it probably makes somewhere in the 500 horsepower range out of a front wheel drive Pontiac Grand Prix. I've also driven the LS4 car, the GXP. These cars, like the Buick Regal, the GTP, or just the Grand Prix in general, somebody had one, right? Your dad had one, your grandpa had one, your mom had one, because these things were everywhere in the 90s. Like, you could not escape these things. But let's do a little bit of a breakdown. So you have the supercharger, then you have the couplers that go all the way around, then you have the turbo. Then at the same time, you have every gauge imaginable on the inside, and you have a Pontiac G6 manual transmission. Now the Pontiac G6 was kind of in the last stand of Pontiac, right? You had the Pontiac Vibe, which was essentially the Toyota Matrix, the G8, which was like the big desperation, like, please keep buying our cars, it's cool, we promise, taking Holden and the GTO over here. You can definitely tell in the interior that it is the brother of the Buick. It has everything swooping towards the driver, and honestly, it's in pretty good shape in the interior. I'm actually really impressed. I thought a lot of the GM plastics would be destroyed, right, all these years later. But honestly, cruising in this thing on the highway is pretty quiet. However, it has really long gearing, but that actually is a good thing for things like roll racing, because you just stay in third gear most of the time and maybe get into fourth gear. So it still has a lot of the 90 isms, like the 4-spoke steering wheel, and it's actually pretty comfortable, but it's also got BC Racing coilovers as well. And the GTP was always the car I feel like I would see at a car meet like once, and then they would never come back to the same place. So they always had a little bit of mystique to me. I would actually see the Buick Regals a lot more. This V6, I think, is one of the most underrated things that GM ever made. When I think of the word sleeper with the Buick, that was the first time I ever even heard that term. Oh, my dad has this Buick sleeper. I go, what do you mean by that? They go, oh, well, it has a supercharger on it from the factory. I think that was so bizarre. But the GTP was a little bit sportier looking, right? Not as grandpa. And with this, the red is the GM red, where a lot of the clear coat would wear out over time and everything. Yeah, this G6 transmission actually is more user-friendly than I thought, because this car never had a clutch pedal ever, right? These were pretty much all auto. So it has 4 pedals. It has the gas, the brake, the new clutch, and then the parking brake. So if you instinctively got in and thought that was the clutch, that would not be a good day. Oh my God, that was so much more turbo than I expected. It's very deceiving because it uses basically a factory bottom end and a little bit of valve train work and stuff like that. But overall, stock motor. When you're cruising in 4th gear, it sounds like a normal Pontiac. Like there's nothing that crazy special about it or anything. And then you barely get into it. That is maybe the loudest turbo I've heard in like a year. That is obnoxious. Oh yeah, it's got the eBay special blow-up valve as well, but hey, it works. So at idle, if you're sitting at a stoplight with the blower system in that, it's already making boost at idle. So it's literally ready at the snap of a finger. And this is actually the very first time I've ever driven anything twin charged. So it's a new experience for me. Okay, all right. It's gonna be one of those days. Okay. Instant wheel spin. So the turbocharger is a 62mm precision turbo, and that's a lot of the times that you find on a lot of other platforms that are really popular for high-speed stuff. So it does have CTSV brakes, so thankfully we have some stopping power for this thing, because I don't think the factory brakes would have done it. That is crazy. On the level of torque steer, out of my experience, there's like B-Series swap EG hatch Honda. And you're like, okay, it's not so bad. Then you get to open diff big turbo car, and you're like, okay, this is pretty bad. And then there's Mazda Speed 3, and then there's Dodge Omni GLH, right, where you're just like, this is terrifying. Woo! Okay, all right. Okay. Yeah, it razzle-dazzles for sure. Like, top of the rev range, you're doing this pretty good. But if you give it a little bit of a pedal, it'll kind of snap back and forth a smidge. But yeah, if you did not know what you were doing, you'd be freaking the f out. Okay, all right. So second gear, you basically let it eat, right? You just let the tires rip pretty good and it'll start straightening itself out. As soon as you get into boost with 3rd or 4th gear, you're freaking cooking side to side. I think what's really unique about this car is also kind of the way you sit. And well, also the coilovers help that, right? You sit nice and low. I think it's actually more difficult to drive if you don't commit to the throttle. That seems to be it. If I try to manhandle it with my foot, right? If I try to pedal it, it torque steers more. It kind of goes all the way over here, then all the way over here, then all the way over here. Yeah, if you just go, guess what, car? You're gonna do this and you're gonna like it. That's when it actually goes the straightest. Here's the thing though, even though I'm torque steering all over the place, I'm still moving forward. Right, a lot of the times when you have a lot of torque steer, you're kind of just sitting in place for the most part, right? Kind of gliding side to side. I'm still accelerating because the blower and the turbo is like, guess what? No matter what, you're going forward. I just want to make some sound against this Jersey barrier. Oh, the gearing's so long, that's second. Okay. Okay. It's like when you're at like 50% throttle, you're like, oh, this is goofy and enjoyable and I'm still going pretty straight. And then as soon as you give it all of it, you're like, okay, pay attention. Yeah, that is satisfying, dude. You ever notice companies will take like an economy car transmission or a normal sporty commuter car transmission, and that's the strong one. It's just weird how that works sometimes. All right, yeah, I believe that this thing makes 500 horsepower. 100%. 100%. And you have to think, this is a 90s car, and even though it physically looks pretty big, it's still on the low end of 3,000 pounds. So it still feels fairly light, and the longer wheelbase definitely helps it with its stability for sure. Yeah, so for a car that never was meant to have a clutch pedal, it's pretty good. This transmission suits this car. I'm actually very impressed, and it's very notchy. That's what I like about it. Who would have thought? The Pontiac G6 has a good shifter. I've really enjoyed driving this thing because of how weird and unique it is. And compound boost is violent, right? The moment the blower and the turbo work together, you just go, oh, I guess it does work that way. Since it's already building boost, right? It already gets the job done. It's just like, okay, yeah, we just have to let off the clutch a little bit, it bites and you move. I think the torque steer of this car would shoo a lot of people away. I really enjoyed it. This V6 is a powerhouse. If you have it in the right hands, it's an absolute powerhouse. And I definitely would like to see more of these cars for sure out there, out and about and revived, because pretty sure you can find these motors somewhere out there. That's about it. I had a great time, and I'll see you guys next time. Take it easy. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.